What's up, guys? It's Apurva. I've got another episode of Door Stories happening today. Super excited about my longtime friend now. It's been a minute. I can
Yeah.
probably say that a couple of years at least. Andrew Franklin, many ventures under his umbrella. We're going to unpack a lot of it, but appreciate you taking the time, my man. And let's just take it from the top. Background, professional journey, what you've been up to, the Franklin enterprise. Let's just where was the beginning of it? Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So grew up in Katy, Texas. Both my parents were real estate agents, and my mom was my dad's first assistant, so she wasn't in production. And my whole sort of childhood growing up on that interaction was more geared toward how to be smart with your money and business, but never really real estate. So I ended up graduating from Katy High School, and then I went to a college out in Virginia, small school called Washington and Lee University. And although very close relationship with both my dad and my mom, I never thought real estate was something I was going to do, probably mostly because my dad would always try to talk me out of it. And we could unpack that if you want. And so I graduated with an accounting and basically finance degree. And I told some fraternity brothers my freshman and sophomore year, how do I make the most amount of money? And I don't care how hard I have to work as a 22-year-old, college grad. And where I went to college, a lot of people either went to law school or they got into the investment banking world. So that's what I did. I went the M&A investment banking world out in San Francisco. I actually graduated in 2008. And so not the greatest time to get into high finance. But I actually had two job offers, one in Richmond and one in San Francisco. And so I ended up going to San Francisco, stayed with that firm about 5 years, doing all mergers and acquisitions, and actually moved to our New York office for the last year. And then I wanted to get back to Texas, so I switched to another M&A firm, and I was out of Dallas then. And then, sort of burnt out and decided, real estate wouldn't be a bad thing to give it a try. And that was, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago. And so that's where real estate began for me.
Yes, I'm gonna ask because you perked my interest. Why did Dad, the great Jimmy Franklin, not encourage you into real estate? And then I also want to just, like, 10 years is really not a lot of time for how much you guys have, all the groundwork that's been laid and all the different businesses you now have. But let's tell me why Dad was discouraging. That's interesting.
Yeah. I think it was more timing. So since I graduated in '08, at that time he started in '83 in real estate. And so that time, what's that? 17 plus 8 years. So 25 years he was in real estate. And I think he was sort of scared, to be honest. He had a second house. First time he rented that house because he was worried about the crash. One of the like, for a very hot minute, he put that like on a short-term rental before like Airbnb and a VRBO. So it's an odd thing for him to do. Is his first year in 2008 for his business to like not grow. Like most real estate people, unless the market really impacts them, tend to grow a little bit every year because they have a bigger database and more past clients. And so he was like this in '08 was the first time he dipped. And I think so he was scared of sort of the industry and where real estate agents were going to go. But then 9 was better than 8, and 10 was better than 9, and 2011 was better. So he just kept growing after that. But also, I think it was he didn't graduate college, and I was, a top graduate in Katy, and then I went to a really good college. So I just think he thought like and if you talk to him, he's like, I sort of fell into real estate and I got lucky. And so, those were probably the biggest reasons, is that I don't think he saw what we could build on top of. He just sort of considered himself a realtor, and we've been fortunate enough to sort of take that base and grow it into more opportunities. And I don't think he saw what was possible.
Mm. And so, I mean, totally makes sense. I mean, '08 was probably, the beginnings of one of the worst real estate markets we've seen pretty much historically at this point, right? So, as we're both parents, you worry and you're like, no, no, like let's find something else. So that completely makes sense. Now, obviously, we know that you ignored that concern and just
Eventually.
went all in. But so, what was the first step for you? So you came out of this like financial, profession, finance profession, and shifted into real estate. What was the very first move? Was it just become a realtor or what was it?
Yeah. So we had been talking about a year before, like sort of getting burnt out and maybe to finish because I had been promoted a couple sort of levels in the investment banking world, and I was a year-ish away from vice president. And so my plan was to get promoted to vice president and then potentially dabble into real estate with him. That's what we are talking about. And then I was going to go to business school. In investment banking, you get a lot of what you make is one day a year on a bonus. So by the time I left, what I got on my bonus every year was more than what I was making salary, and I still had a pretty good salary. And so I was at a new firm that I hadn't been with, and they sort of screwed the whole investment bank. Like they promised one thing, and then like my number was supposed to be like 150 to $200,000 bonus, and my bonus was like 85 grand. And so I called my dad like in tears, and on that phone, like literally, I found out my bonus number. I'm a 20-something-year-old kid at that time, no family, living in an apartment in Dallas city. I don't really know a lot of people, and changed from a firm that I had a lot of relationships, been there 6 years. And it wasn't just me. They screwed a lot of people. I called him and he said, just quit and come move to Houston and we'll figure out the real estate thing. And so in investment banking, you get your number and like 2 weeks later, it hits your bank account. So I stayed for 2 weeks. The day
Mhm.
it hit my bank account, it was a very buttoned up company. So it was like full on suit. And I came in like a golf polo, and my boss like, I know what you're here to do, because everyone's bonus hits the same time. So I quit, broke my lease, moved to Houston without a real plan. Obviously, we knew at that time my dad had a good real estate business. He was still in production, right? He went from in production to retired, once we took over. But so I started just as a realtor. I remember him setting up a meeting with his title company that he had small ownership in. I didn't know what title insurance was. I remember him setting up with a loan officer that was a buddy, telling me between conventional loan and FHA loan. Like I never knew any of that. He never talked about any of that. And so really, my first ever transaction was a lease on a Saturday to an ex-NFL player. It was like a property call lead. I drove 45 minutes to Fulshire because I was living in town. And so, heavy into production the first couple of years doing leases and buyers, and then eventually graduated to sellers. And then about 5 years into that, I was like, I need to get out of the day-to-day production. Was going on like, 5 to 8 listings a week, and was just burnt out. So
So where is, and this is all on the Franklin team, I
yep,
presume, right?
yep.
Under Remax at the time. I know there's some, new moves down the road that, we'll certainly unpack. But so um you're just an agent, learning the ropes, you're learning the game, and you kind of, naturally kind of grow your production, and then that starts to kind of unlock, okay, well now I need to scale, I need to optimize whatever. Walk me through the journey of moving up the ladder with the Franklin team.
Yeah, about a year in, once I felt like 6 months in, I knew how to be a good realtor, and I knew all of that piece. And I had the fortunate where Franklin team had leads, and so I got a lot of at bats, even if I didn't generate those at bats. And my dad was mostly living in the hill country and running the team. He come into town for 2 weeks, or he come into town every 2 to 3 weeks for like 3 days, and he would do his appointments. And so he was pretty much checking out with the growth. And so about a year in, that's when we were still, it was me, my dad's other partner that had been with him a while, and my sister. And we started sort of taking the reins over. And I think about that year mark is when we bought the company. But for the first 4 years after that, we were just sort of running the company as producing realtors and not really running the company, right? We had an infrastructure there, but like we weren't really, we were working in the business instead of on the business. And so I think, yeah, a year we bought it. And my dad and my sister and the other partner had been on the Franklin team a long time. And so, but we bought it about a year into my stint. And then really the shift was getting out of production for us because it freed up a lot of time. And that was, like I said, that was around the time we made the move to Remax. I mean, from Remax to EXP, and no connection to those two moves, but that's what freed us up to do all these other ventures, which first was title, and then, you know, a number of other things after that.
And so you mentioned kind of a adage that we hear all the time, like, being in the business, working in the business and not on the business, right? I think as a fellow entrepreneur, that's a mindset shift that, for a lot of us, it's not easy, especially control freaks, like you got to get in there and get in the weeds. What do you think in your kind of journey? This is more kind of high level, but like in your journey, like when did you start to kind of actualize, like, wait, I'm probably stifling my own growth by not, shifting my mindset around like this top line view. And I think, you're one of the people that I think have done it really effectively. It's not easy to juggle multiple businesses, in my sphere at least, right? And so, I really want to kind of hone in on that. Like, obviously there's systems, processes, strategies, playbooks, a lot of that under the hood, but it starts with the mindset shift, right? And so where did that happen? Where did that got unlocked for you?
My mindset shift was like around the same time. And it wasn't because I was stifling my own growth. It was because I started opening up my world to personal development and what a coach can do, what a
Mm.
networking group can do, what a mastermind could do. And you know, it was random. I joined a Facebook real estate group and I made a post. The Franklin team at the time was selling 400, 500 homes a year, and we had no CRM. And so I made a post on that group, and people, Kevin Coffin and Fred Weaver responded and like, you're doing 400 homes a year and you don't have a CRM. And then so Kevin messaged me and said, "You don't. Who do you coach with?" And I said, "I don't a coach. I don't have a coach." And then so we built a little relationship through Facebook Messenger. And then I saw a post, maybe, I don't remember the timing, a month, 6 months later, Kevin posted, "Hey, I'm taking on new real estate coaching clients." And at that time, I saw a lot of people that I looked up to having coaches and thinking like, yeah, maybe it's not as bad of an idea as I once thought when that question was posed to me. And so I replied to that post and said, I would love to be your, coaching client. I enjoyed their content and what they were putting out there." And Kevin responded like, "Hey, I already booked up, but my partner, Fred, you jump on a Zoom with him, see if he might be a good fit." And so I started coaching with Fred. And then that I think is what opened up my whole world to how little I knew, and
Mm.
how even if I technically was selling more real estate than somebody, that they could still help me a lot through connections and knowledge and introductions and all this stuff. And so Fred, about 6 months, 9 months into that, I started just thinking more critically about my business because I was having this very sharp person talk to me about, things that I might have been missing. And so that's what drove us to EXP. That 6, 9 months is, I told him on a random coaching call that I didn't think we were getting value out of Remax and we were going to make a move. And he said, "Well, we're leaving KW, haven't announced it, but you should look at EXP." But from the real big shift is when we joined EXP, he introduced me to their coach because he's like, hey, we're business partners now. I'm not going to charge you to, have this formal conversation. And you've been coaching with me so long, like 6, 9 months, like I don't really have anything new to tell you. And so I started coaching with his coach. And I remember on a coaching call, I was in a builder trip and I was like super stressed because I was still going on appointments, but I was starting to try to grow my business because I was starting to think more critically. And I told him, man, I'm so freaking stressed out right now. I'm so like, I got so many things on my plate. And he's like, let's unpack that. And like 60 days later, I had made a hire to get out of production. My first hire to get out of production is we hired a listing specialist and then listing managers. And then it was like, I got my time back. And then all these ideas that were on my list to do, I started able to tackle them because I just got 50 hours of time back. And so that sort of progression is what really changed my life, is those coaching conversations.
So it all started with a CRM or lack thereof.
Pretty
That's
much, pretty much.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's incredible. I mean, talk about, just the serendipitous, Facebook post that led to, an entire career shift, which has now led to multiple ventures, and again, we're going to keep unpacking this stuff, but this is incredible. And so like, I'm gonna hone in on the coaching thing. We both now mutually are in the EO, the Entrepreneurial Organization, and that's been something that's been kind of brought to my attention, and I was missing, right? So like I hired a business coach specifically, not even a year now, right? And so like it's you think like we all have big egos as entrepreneurs, whether we deserve them or not, right? or they're earned or not, but like and so but I think sometimes you just think that, hey, I got this, I can figure it out, I'm intelligent. And I don't think it's a reflection or a lack of intelligence. It's just you need another voice, another perspective, and usually that's somebody that's been through it further along than you have. So that's incredible that you kind of put those dots together. And I mean, you're talking about, at least in real estate sales, which is kind of one, I think a lot of people confuse real estate investing and real estate sales and just being in real estate, as an industry. There's kind of some blurred lines there, but in real estate sales, you're talking about some of the best in the game, right? And on that note, so the Franklin team, I can't keep up with the accolades, but number one, top five, top in, it's definitely at EXP, right? Likely in the nation on many levels, right? Specifically new construction sales. But let's talk about where you are today with the Franklin team.
Yeah. So what we sort of got from my dad was him being a really great realtor with a little bit of systems and processes and a lot of great relationships in the builder world and a really good reputation. But not a really big real estate team as far as people and having other agents. And so when we took over 10, 11 years ago, like I said, he was still going on appointments now. And he had a lot of admin support to help him do that kind of volume with a small amount of agents. But now the Franklin team looks like we have a whole leadership team that's not in production. So a president, a VP of ops, a sales manager. We have 50-ish agents right now, another 20, 25, 30. I can't keep up, W-2s, and then another 5 or so international virtual assistants. And so this year, I think with legitimate transactions, taking out the builder courtesy listings, I think we'll probably hit around 1,000 homes sold this year. Which is, really our best year ever in real estate. And so it's morphed a lot, especially over the last 2 or 3 years, but that's what it looks like today.
And I'll timestamp in the sense that we're coming out of hopefully coming out of one of the hardest transitional markets that we've had, from a super high to a very low, and the fact that you continue to grow, and now at the highest you've still had even in great times, is incredible. So I want to hone in on that. One of the things that you guys have done an incredible job is identifying and placing good leadership to allow you to continue to grow the business and focus on strategic decision making, right, as owners. like talk me through that journey when do you like it's your namesake business, right? But you know, a lot of people that are not in your family are now running the business, right?
Yeah.
And so what does that transition look like? How do you layer in processes to allow you to get to that point? How do you, I mean, walk me through that. That's very critical decision making.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, the reason I'm able to work 40 hours a week and have, five true businesses and is all about people. And so do we have systems and processes? Absolutely. But the biggest thing was we noticed someone that's a good person in our world. Usually it's someone we know. And so our first real big hire, so we did the whole out of production thing for maybe a couple years before we made a leadership hire. So we were sort of running the business, and that allowed us to start other businesses because it freed up some time. But then someone in our world was a team member, and we were like, okay, we need someone that drives the Franklin team without us. A true seventh level business. And so at that time, we created our first ever non-producing leadership team member that wasn't one of us, one of the owners, which was Carrie Bond. And so we created a position for her. So she was already on the Franklin team in a business development role. And we moved her to VP of Ops, which was a new role we never had. And it was amazing how much stuff that was in our head started to get done because we had another
Mm.
high producing person that wasn't in the day to day of transactions, which was huge because we could work on the business and have more talent on the business. Then we had a very pivotal move to what you're on as well, entrepreneurial operating system, EOS, which I joke with people that EOS loves to spend your money. And so you better want growth because the only way you're going to be able to afford EOS is because they're going to show you how many hires you need to make and what holes you have in your business, which I say that jokingly is a life-changing thing for us as well. And so that sort of us revisiting the accountability chart on the Franklin team and realizing how many holes and what our 10-year vision was and all that stuff. And so that's when we then made Carrie had so much on her plate. We replaced her and promoted her to president. Then we decided we wanted to go and add a bunch of agents. So we needed a sales manager. So all this stuff, is big stuff that doesn't happen overnight. But it just sort of started with some desire or some pain we were having, and then decided like, how do we get, if that thing needs to be done, how do we get it done without us having to do it? And in our situation, a lot of that is drive more revenue and hire someone to handle that. So.
And so, would you say how much of it was guidance of your coach that led you to kind of start making some of these moves, versus kind of the organic, like just normal growth of a company? Like, yeah, we're overloaded. Now we need next hire, that kind of thing.
I mean, if I look back at like all of like if I wrote down like the 20 most pivotal decisions I've made in my business life, like 18 of them were from not me, from a coach or me copying someone else, right? Like Carrie being VP of Ops was an idea from a coach I had, but like in a different idea, like it's sort of like, hey, you need this person. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, but I'm going to tweak that a little bit. And I know who the right person is, and I can see exactly where that can take me. And so like, I tell people all the time, like, I don't really have any good ideas, but I'm pretty good at like just understanding when there is a good idea from someone else and then executing it. But yeah, I mean, Carrie move from business development to VP of Ops was from a coach as well, a different coach than I mentioned.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then from there, all the new hires on the Franklin team leadership wise was EOS. So that's another coach, right? My EOS
Right.
implementer, basically. And so my hard money lending business was from a coach. It's
Well,
crazy. I don't
perfect
have a coach
segue.
right now.
So I mean, I just wanted to hone in on the point of what value really, whether it could be a coach, a board, our EO organization, you've got
Yeah.
forum mates. These are all just guides, kind of along, just helping you unpack strategy, right? Like I always joke that you could probably Google the Patriots playbook, but and any NFL team could probably download it, right? But that's
Yeah.
not going to make them the Patriots, at least the old Patriots, right? So like,
Yeah.
it's all about kind of, the right coach to put the right moves in front of
Yeah.
you, guide you through it, understand you. Anyway, so let's talk about the segue. So you've got, you said five, right? I counted more, but
I only
five
consider
businesses
five
that
main ones.
so you're actively involved in, right? And you've kind of leveled up leaders for each of them, so that it sounds like the similar journeys have kind of happened or transpired at each business. But tell me about kind of what was business two, what led to kind of developing it. Are you the spark that kind of brings these ideas to the table? It sounds like the hard money one was for sure. But like, how does that transpire? You guys have a family business, right? There's kind of, members of the family that run it, which I think is incredible, right? I aspire for that for my own family one day, right? My young kids and things like that. But, tell me kind of how this stuff, where does the next one come up? What is that business?
Yeah.
What does that journey look like?
Yeah, so all of the businesses were, I'm definitely the prototypical like visionary where I'm sort of driving a lot of these decisions. But all the really new business of really were maybe not my original idea, like a coach or, from someone from stage, but I sort of drove them. The first one was title. And that came up because when we bought the business from my dad, he had ownership in a title company. And basically, he was like, part of the agreement when we bought the business, because we bought it over a 5-year period that turned into a longer period. And that's another story. But he had said, hey, I make this amount of money from this title company. Anything you make on top of that, you can keep. And so as we grew the Franklin team, that title company gave us more shares because we were sending more and more business. And so we started to make some money from title. My dad was keeping part of it, then we were taking some of it. And then I started shopping titles like, okay, we control 15 a month now. And then it was like, we control 20 a month, and then we control 25 a month. And so I'm going to go shop this title company and see if there's a better like JV, ABA situation out there. And I just learned a lot about title. And I learned that the only way we were going to make more money is if we started our own. And good thing I didn't know how hard it was, because I decided to do it. And it was a terrible first year. We were profitable, but it was just, it's a tough people business, finding good people. And so that was the first one, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, maybe 7. I think we're 7. And, that one's grown a lot. But then I was like, okay, I know how to start a new company. And then I sort of got the bug, and then hard money lending came, and then real estate acquisitions came, and then property management. So those are the 5. Yeah.
So title, hard money, real estate acquisitions, right? They kind of, I mean, you productize that as a service that your agents can offer as like a, you know, buy now, cash offer type of thing.
Yeah.
So of these businesses, and they're all complementary, they're all synergistic. And so you've got this main platform, which is the Franklin team that feeds a lot of these complementary business, which I think is incredible. Which one's the favorite and why?
I share this with other team members, so I guess I'm okay saying this. I think the one I like the most because it's the best fundamentals of the business. So I have great people in all of the businesses, and it allows me to sort of work on the business on all of them. But the fundamentals are the best in my hard money lending business, because you can close a transaction in 2 days. So the process is easier. So it doesn't take as many people, which means it's more profitable. It's the highest margin. I think it's the least competitive of all the businesses I have, because it's very capital intensive, and for whatever reason, it's just not as many of them out there, and at least in my experience. So we've been able to really grow without a sales and marketing function. But that's the business that I believe that we could get it to sell for 100 million someday. Like, and I don't think we're that many moves away from that being possible.
No, I mean, I love it. And I kind of cheated and knew that was probably going to be the answer because I've known you for a while. But, I think, efficient, fast, rapid growth, some decent moat in terms of competition. I
Yeah.
mean, and capital constraints, right? Like, I think that, that's a good DNA of any good business that can kind of check a lot of those boxes, right? And so I think, as you learn more about building businesses, like I joke sometimes, like, if I'd have learned about all the other options of businesses I could run, I knew I wanted to run a business. I just,
Yeah.
just like you said with title, like that was a very challenging journey, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
you're like, man, if I just known that I could
Yeah.
just put my time and resources in something else or something easier, faster. So, okay, so you mentioned kind of some snippets of where we're going with all this, right? Um, what is the kind of, and it's hard to forecast, decades out, but let's just talk about 3 years, 5 years. Exits are not easy in a lot of the businesses that we own, right? And so it's like, and they're becoming ever more commoditized. We've got a lot of pressure, especially real estate sales and mortgage and title there, there's all this downward pressure and compression of margins and things like that. Where you like, do you have a plan? You're on EOS, you run on EOS, so you've got some 3 year, 5 year, 10 year vision, I'm sure, that you're working
Yeah.
around. Well, walk me through what those look like.
Yeah, for the Franklin team, our 2032. When people used to say those out old like long goals, I would roll my eyes like you don't have an idea of where you're going to be in 2032. And now that I'm on EOS, like I love having that sort of 10-year sort of vision, even though I know it's going to morph a lot over that time. But Franklin team, 10-year picture, which we're a couple years into, is to sell 5,000 homes in a year. Envision title, our 10-year, which we're probably only a year into that, is to have 15 locations in Houston. We're like halfway there, actually, about seven. We're about to announce our seventh here in the next 30 days. The lending business, we're 25 million outstanding. We want to, I don't really have a 10-year on that because like it's crazy what we could do in that business in 10 years. But I do think we can get to 100 million lent out on the street at one time in like 2 to 3 years, which is crazy to think about. But we've 2.5x the business in the last 12 months. The acquisitions business, we're really going to start doing more new construction. We actually haven't announced this, but we have 2 specs we're going on right now, or we're about to start building right now. And then we just bought some lands for 3 more specs. So we'll start to build five different new construction homes. And then on the property management side, we think we can get to a couple hundred doors pretty quickly. We're already at 50 doors. And so, 10-year plan on that one, we haven't really talked about it, but my guess is 500 plus doors. And I think all of that stuff is probably going to happen. The hardest one, because it's the hardest business and the most competitive, is getting to 5,000 homes. And on the
Mhm.
Franklin team, that's the only one that I'm like, oh man, that's going to be tough to 5x a business, just because 5,000 homes is really a ton.
That's a lot.
But the other ones, I'm very confident that they're going to happen. So.
And so I want to unpack the acquisitions for a second. Now, are you keep building a rental portfolio, or what are you like
So that
flipping, like you're
that
building houses? What are we doing with those? Are you gonna sell them or are you keeping them?
that business was started so I could cost seg and get a bunch of depreciation for my active income. And then what I realized is I had a very talented partner in that you can't make money with rentals. And so like our first like 12 houses in the first 6 months were all rentals. And then we realized like that's tough for him because he was a partner that was full time in the business, running it, sort of
Mm,
the sweat guy. I was the debt and the equity and using our resources in that like he needs to make money and you can't make money like making $200 a home. It takes a long
right.
time. And so we transitioned that to flips, doing a lot of flips. We were doing like 10 to 12 flips at a time, and then realized that it's tough to scale that business, and especially the construction piece. And so then we sort of pivoted and do some flips, some rentals, some owner finance, and we do a lot of wholesale now. So we're wholesaling about 5 to 10 a month right now. We have a full-time sales manager. We have a director of ops. We now have 6 agents in that business. So we're starting to scale that. But his big vision is take that sort of off-market generating machine, which it is now. We're generating a lot of off-market leads, and pick and choose. Like those two properties that we're going to build 2 homes and 3 homes were generated from the acquisitions business, and we just decided like, hey, both of them have homes on them. Hey, these are good, not, tear down kind of houses. He wants to do more of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that acquisitions business turns into a home building business. But we would probably still keep the acquisitions business because it feeds a lot of good land deals as well.
No, that makes sense. So I want to kind of stay on point here. So, really this podcast has primarily been people that have built portfolios of real estate that they kind of own and control. It sounds like you've had a similar journey of like most people start with single family and kind of continue to level up. Um, let's talk about your holdings, right? Like where you guys at, from a real estate ownership standpoint, that is, it sounds like that's going to live under the acquisitions business, but
Yeah.
there's kind of a difference there. What does that look like, and what asset classes do you like now? Given that you've kind of gone through some motions, where are we going with that?
Yeah, so really we're probably going to be heavier into the notes business. So we're going to really go deep on keeping notes. So buying stuff off market and owner financing them. That's going to be a big initiative we're going to roll out in the next 12 months. We're very close on a line of capital, very hard to find bank
Hmm.
debt on that. But we have, through that business, me and my partner, we're about 15 rentals, but that was all done in like a 6 month period, our first 6 months. And the depreciation was great. As rates come down, we'll probably start picking and choosing some stuff we'll keep again. But the last 24 months, or really whenever rates was at 18 months, whenever rates popped, I can't even remember. Whenever
Yeah.
rates popped, we stopped keeping stuff. But we'll probably go back to picking and choosing. Neither him or I have a lot of experience in the multifamily or the self-storage. So there's other asset classes we like, but because of where our relationships are, a lot of real estate agents, we get a lot of access to single family deals. And so it'll always probably be a big piece of it. And at one point I was like, we're going to have 200 doors. And I'm like, I just don't have that vision anymore. Not that I'm against rentals, but I feel like there's better places to put your money. In that the greatest thing about rentals is depreciation. And otherwise, I probably would never own a single family rental ever again if it wasn't for the depreciation I
Right.
could capture from it. But we'll probably be accumulating a lot more notes than rentals over the next 24 months.
And so, I mean, most of that's going to be and this is just tactical stuff. It's going to be taxes active income, right? So you're leaning
Yeah.
on depreciation to kind of offset some of it, hopefully. But, um, you know, is it just kind of going to organically run in parallel? Like, hey, we've cooked up a lot of active income. We better grab a couple properties to kind of help offset the pain quickly.
Yeah.
And that's a moving target too, because the depreciation rules keep changing every year, right? Um,
Yeah, and we have a really good tax guy and so like he brought me into like a fee simple deal where I could invest money and have a write off,
mm,
and I do some oil and gas investing, which get a decent return with tax play. So I really need, because we're not like that, acquisitions business was created so I could have a tax play, and then we realized that as a business we could actually make a bunch of money, and that the tax play of rentals was affecting the ability for my partner to make income. And
right.
so I need a better solution. And so what I think it's going to look like is probably being a passive investor in some stuff so I can get
Yeah,
depreciation or
just
some tax stuff.
be an LP and some of the guys that are swinging at some of the assets that you want
Yeah.
exposure to, but not necessarily a
Yeah.
master of yet. No, I love that, man. This has been really cool. I'm gonna kind of round us out. So, one common theme that I noticed is, when we talked about kind of that future picture painting, um, that was kind of modeled through the VTO exercise, which is a tool of traction, which is what EOS is really, the book Traction, but the EOS is the system, right? Is that it seems to be a common denominator across all the businesses now, right?
Absolutely. Like I tell anyone I mentor, whether they're a single realtor or running a big team or a big business, like if you don't, like I can't help you even mentor or coach or advise you or give you even one piece of advice unless you know where you're going, where you want to be in 5 or 10 years. And if you can't answer that, like before we even start talking, if you like, because like we get people that like want to, hey, can you help me or give me some advice? And I'm like, where do you want to be in 5 years? And they struggle with that. And it's hard to know where you're going in the next year or quarter without knowing where you're going in the next 5 years, because those decisions you make today are going to affect what you're doing in the next five. And so I will never start a business ever again that I don't start with where I want to go in the next 5 or 10 years. That doesn't mean I have to be right or that I have to stick with that plan, but I need an idea first. And that was, you're right, it's completely from EOS, that sort of concept. And so I look at everything in my life from parenting to marriage to businesses on like where I want to be in the next 5 or 10 years. And I'm going to make decisions that are getting me closer to that goal.
I love it. And then it's, another thing that I kind of want to pull out of this was it seems like you've really leaned into peer groups, collaborative kind of environments, masterminds is kind of one of your kind of strategic advantages to kind of be immerse yourself in them, soak in, information and, grow your network. But like, how do you like kind of filter? Because there's so many, right? And
Yeah.
there's like gurus and masterminds and da 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 da. But I think you've kind of honed in on some strong ones for yourself, right? But walk me through kind of that vetting process because there seems to be like a lot of noise out there.
It's usually based on someone I trust and or people I trust that talk of that. I never join something. I never end up pulling the trigger unless someone I already know like is a raving fan about it. And so or that like I just really like if it's a coach, I really respect that person and what they've done. If it's a group, a mastermind, or EO, like I want to know like who is in that room, like who are the people and what are they saying about it. So I'm a big believer in like who you trust and who you respect and leaning into those people. And so that's how I've done it. Like again, just copying other people. And if someone has good feedback on something, then I'm going to give it a try. And if it was I like to, I was going to say if it was a whiff, then I'll just move on. But I've actually never whiffed on that. Like I've never whiffed
Hmm,
on, I don't think I've ever paid a coach or a mastermind. Actually, one time. And he's the most well-known influencer I've ever leaned into. And that was the only event I've ever gone to where I'm like, I won't say the name, but you know him. And I respect
sure.
everything he does. But I went to this event and I paid 5 grand for 2 days. And I was like, that wasn't worth it. Every other time, every other coach, mastermind, networking group, I've always been like, I got 5x, 10x, 100x for my time and my investment. And so, don't always believe influencers, believe the people that you know and trust in your sort of local area. But I've just gotten so much value from those things. Like I can't even imagine how much money I've made from coaches and mentors and masterminds. Like it's astronomical.
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the people I've noticed leans into that as kind of a growth strategy more than others, and but that's why I love it. I mean, it weighs on you. You're traveling a lot, and you're kind of away from the family a lot, and all that stuff. But there's clearly a return on that effort. Um, I'm gonna round us out, man. This has been great, dude. Andrew, I always, it's always a great time just being around you and your family. Now I've gotten to know everybody, and that I'm blessed to have you guys in my sphere at this point. But this is always great, man. I appreciate the time you took with me today. We're
Sure.
gonna do like a 5 year check-in and just see how many of because we rattled off a lot of goals, right? So I'm gonna circle back and be like, all right, man, what happened? Let's see. But I appreciate the time, dude. Thank you so much, and I will publish all the contact info and all that jazz in the show notes. But look forward to kind of watching the journey even more.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, dude.
All right.